podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling learning English solo.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got a ton of resources for you guys out there who are on this journey no matter what level you're at.
Absolutely. And the approach in the materials that we've been looking at has been really refreshing because it emphasizes that you're developing a skill.
Yeah.
It's not just, memorizing facts and figures.
Right, it's like you're building a muscle almost.
Exactly.
And so I think we've all kind of fallen into that trap of like, okay, I'm going to learn English, and then it's like having a gym membership you never use. And so one of the things that this guide starts out with is talking about goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always so curious, like, how do we get past that generic goal setting into something more actionable?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are some tips that you have for setting goals that are actually going to get us speaking, reading, and writing better?
Well, I think that instead of just learning English, what if you set a goal to watch a 10-minute English language news segment and then try to summarize the key points?
Okay.
That's something that is very specific, it's measurable,
Yeah.
it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound.
Yeah, those SMART goals.
Yeah, those SMART goals, exactly.
And so much more concrete than just saying, I'm going to improve my listening skills.
Right.
So I like that. The guide also talks about vocabulary building. And while I am a huge fan of flashcards, I love the idea of labeling things around your house.
Yes.
But imagine like guests coming over and they just see like refrigerator plastered on your refrigerator.
I know, but I think that visual connection can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And it really ties in nicely with another suggestion that they had, and that's reading.
Okay.
Because if you think about, you're reading a simple children's book, let's say.
Sure.
And you see the word apple, and then you glance up and you see that you've labeled your apple on your fruit bowl.
Oh, that's a good point.
It just reinforces it in such a fun way.
So is the idea to like start with simple books and kind of work your way up?
Absolutely. Children's books are a fantastic place to start because the language is straightforward, the stories are engaging, and you're not getting bogged down with, really complex grammar or vocabulary right off the bat.
That makes a lot of sense. The guide also suggests keeping a notebook handy to jot down new words.
Yes.
Do you really think that's necessary in the age of like, Google Translate and instant definitions?
I think that there is something about the physical act of writing that helps solidify the word in your memory.
Okay.
And plus you're creating this personalized vocabulary list that you can always come back to and review.
That's true.
It's like your own little language learning treasure chest.
I like that. Okay, I have to ask about this next tip because this is one I've always found a bit strange.
Okay.
And it's talking to yourself. Like, I get that the guide's all about like pushing us to practice speaking, but is like muttering to myself in the mirror really the way to go?
I know it sounds a little strange.
It does.
But when you talk to yourself in English, you're forcing your brain to think in English.
Yeah.
And you're bypassing that translation step.
Okay.
That can really slow us down.
So instead of like translating everything in my head, I'm just letting the words flow.
Exactly. And you're building that mental muscle for spontaneous conversation.
Right.
Which is really what we want. And that actually ties into another great tip that they had, which is repeating phrases that you hear in TV shows or movies.
Okay.
Because not only are you practicing your pronunciation, but you're internalizing those common expressions and sentence structures.
Gotcha.
You're absorbing that natural rhythm of the language.
So it's almost like learning by osmosis.
Right.
Instead of like studying grammar rules in isolation, you're hearing how they're used in like real conversations.
Exactly.
Speaking of grammar, though,
yeah,
that's often the part that trips people up.
I know it can be intimidating.
It can be, yeah.
But I think that the guide frames it in a way that's really helpful.
Okay.
It's not about achieving perfect grammar.
Right.
It's about communicating your message clearly.
Yeah, and how many times have we gotten hung up on like that one grammar rule and lost track of what we were trying to say?
Absolutely. I do it all the time.
And so that's why the guide emphasizes starting with the basics.
Yes.
Don't get bogged down in the exceptions and the nuances right away.
Exactly.
Master those core sentence structures.
Yep. It's like learning to walk before you can run a marathon.
Walk before you can run the marathon. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
What are some simple ways to practice those basic sentence structures?
Well, they actually suggest something really simple, and that is just writing basic sentences about your daily routine.
Okay.
I wake up at 7 a.m., I brush my teeth, I eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Super basic, but it's a really effective way to internalize those fundamental grammar patterns.
It's like laying the foundation for a house.
You're right.
You need those solid building blocks before you can start adding the fancy details.
Absolutely.
So we've got goal setting, vocabulary, speaking, and grammar.
Uh-huh.
But there's one crucial piece of the puzzle that often gets overlooked,
Yes.
and that is staying motivated.
The ever-elusive motivation.
It really is, and it's the make or break factor for any self-learning journey.
It is.
We've all been there. You start with a burst of enthusiasm, and then somewhere along the line, life gets in the way, that initial excitement fades, and suddenly you haven't practiced in weeks.
It happens to the best of us.
It really does.
Yeah.
That's why the guide really focuses on this concept of intrinsic motivation.
Yes.
It's about finding joy in the learning process itself, not just focusing on the end goal.
Right.
And I love that idea because it's about making the journey enjoyable, not just grinding towards some far-off destination.
Exactly.
So how do we actually tap into that intrinsic motivation?
Well, think about your hobbies and your interests. Yeah.
You know, do you love cooking, find English language cooking blogs and recipes?
Okay.
Are you passionate about video games?
Yeah.
Join an online gaming community where English is the main language.
So it's about finding ways to integrate English into the things we already love doing.
Absolutely.
That way it feels less like a chore and more like a natural extension of our interests.
Precisely. And they also talk about, celebrating those small victories along the way.
Yes.
Did you finally nail that tricky grammar rule, treat yourself?
I like that.
Did you manage to have a short conversation with a native speaker, celebrate that win?
Yeah, those little celebrations can make a big difference.
They do.
They remind us why we started this journey in the first place.
Right.
Speaking of things that make a difference, the guide also dives into some really helpful tech tools.
Yes.
I mean, we've got everything from language learning apps to YouTube channels to good old Google Translate.
It's a really incredible toolkit.
It is.
If I had to pick a favorite from the list, I would probably say YouTube. Really?
Yeah, I mean, the sheer volume and variety of English language content on there is mind-blowing.
It's like having an endless library of English learning materials at your fingertips.
It is.
So what makes YouTube so special for language learners?
Well, for one, it's incredibly visual.
Yeah.
You're not just hearing the language, you're seeing it in context.
Right.
Which can be a huge help for understanding.
Okay.
Plus, you can find content on literally any topic that interests you.
Yeah, that's true.
Whether it's cooking, travel, gaming, music, whatever you're into, chances are there's a YouTube channel out there speaking English about it.
That is a great point because I think we sometimes forget that language learning isn't just about textbooks and grammar drills.
Right.
It's about exploring the world, connecting with people, and discovering new passions.
Absolutely.
And YouTube offers a fantastic platform for doing all of that.
And the best part is it's completely free.
It is.
And accessible to anyone with an internet connection.
Okay, I'm already feeling inspired to go down a YouTube rabbit hole.
Well, I know, me too.
But before I do, I want to take a step back and think about everything we've covered.
Okay.
We talked about setting smart goals, building vocabulary beyond flashcards, the surprisingly effective technique of talking to yourself,
Yes.
conquering those grammar fears,
Yes.
tapping into that intrinsic motivation, and leveraging the power of tech tools like YouTube.
It's a lot to digest.
It is a lot, but don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
Speaking of enjoying the journey, I'm curious about those inevitable slumps that we all face.
Yeah.
Those moments when motivation dips and we just can't seem to get ourselves back on track?
Yes.
What are some practical tips for dealing with those challenging times?
One thing that can be really helpful is just to kind of change things up a bit.
Okay.
So, if you've been relying heavily on one particular method, like, flashcards or grammar drills, try something different.
Okay.
Maybe watch an English movie with subtitles or listen to an English podcast on your commute. Sometimes just breaking out of your routine
Right.
can kind of re-spark that interest and make learning feel fresh again.
I like that. And it's a good reminder that language learning can be fun, and there's so many different ways to approach it.
Exactly.
It shouldn't feel like a chore. The guide also mentions the importance of finding a language partner.
Yes.
Is that really essential? I mean, we are focusing on solo learning here.
It can be incredibly beneficial,
Okay.
but it's definitely not a requirement.
Okay.
Especially, I think, in the beginning stages.
Right.
There's so much you can accomplish on your own.
That's true.
And honestly, sometimes the pressure of finding the right partner
Yeah.
can be a roadblock in itself.
Well, I could see that. It's
Yep.
like the pressure of finding a gym buddy. Sometimes it's just easier to lace up your sneakers and go solo.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available now that you can essentially create your own virtual language partner.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about it. You can have conversations with chatbots, practice pronunciation with speech recognition software, and even get feedback on your writing from online communities.
That's a great point. Technology has really opened up a whole new world for language learners.
It really has.
Speaking of technology, I have to ask about something that came up in the guide, and that's language learning apps.
Yes,
There are so many out there.
I know.
Do you have any favorites or any tips for choosing one that's right for you?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is.
It really depends on your individual learning style and your preferences.
Okay.
Some apps are more focused on gamification,
Mm-hmm.
while others emphasize, structured lessons and grammar exercises.
So it's kind of like choosing a workout app.
Is
Some people love the high-intensity stuff, while others prefer a more gentle approach. It all comes down to personal preference.
Exactly. And just like with fitness apps, it's important to try out a few different options
Yeah.
and see what clicks for you. Most language learning apps offer a free trial period, so you can get a feel for the interface, the teaching style, and the features
That's a good tip.
before committing.
It's like test driving a car before you buy it.
Right.
You want to make sure it's a good fit for you. So let's say we found an app, we're feeling motivated, we're making progress, but then we hit a plateau.
Yes.
We're just not seeing that same level of improvement that we were before.
Right.
How do we push past those plateaus and continue leveling up our English skills?
Well, plateaus are totally natural,
Okay.
part of the learning process.
So we shouldn't get discouraged if we encounter them.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
One thing that can be really helpful is to kind of identify the specific areas where you're struggling.
Okay.
Is it listening comprehension? Is it vocabulary? Is it pronunciation?
Right.
Once you kind of pinpoint those problem areas, you can really focus your efforts on those specific skills.
So it's a bit like going to the doctor.
Yes.
You wouldn't just say, I don't feel good.
Right.
You try to explain the specific symptoms so they can give you the right treatment.
That's a great analogy. And just like with health, sometimes we need to consult with an expert
Yeah.
to get the personalized guidance we need.
Right.
So if you're really feeling stuck, consider, booking a session with an English tutor
Okay.
or joining a language exchange program.
Gotcha.
Even just a few sessions can provide some valuable insights and help you break through that plateau.
It's like having a personal trainer for your English skills.
Exactly.
Sometimes that extra bit of support and accountability can make all the difference.
Yes.
So we've talked about setting goals, building vocabulary, practicing speaking, conquering grammar fears, staying motivated, leveraging technology, and even pushing past those inevitable plateaus.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, what about real-life application?
Right.
How do we take all of this knowledge and actually use it to communicate effectively in the real world?
That's the ultimate goal, right?
It is.
All of this effort is about being able to connect with people, share ideas, and experience the world in a deeper way.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the best way to bridge that gap between theory and practice is to simply immerse yourself in the language as much as possible.
So it's about creating opportunities to use English in everyday situations.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything grand or intimidating.
Right.
It could be as simple as ordering your coffee in English, chatting with the shopkeeper,
Okay.
asking for directions.
Yeah.
The more you use the language in real-life contexts, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
I love that it's about taking those small steps and celebrating those little victories along the way.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our deep dive, and I have to say I'm feeling incredibly inspired.
Me too.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, and that's intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
We talked about finding ways to make the learning process enjoyable, but are there any other tips for cultivating that inner drive to keep going, even when it gets tough?
Yeah, one really powerful technique is to actually set aside dedicated time
Okay.
for language learning,
Okay.
just like you would for any other important activity in your life.
Right.
Even if it's just 15 minutes a day.
Uh-huh.
That consistency can make a huge difference.
I think we underestimate the power of those small, consistent actions.
We do.
It's like that saying, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly. And it's also helpful to kind of visualize your progress.
Okay.
Imagine yourself having a fluent conversation,
Yeah.
reading a book without struggling,
Yeah.
understanding a movie without subtitles.
Right.
That mental image can be a really powerful motivator.
It's like creating a mental movie trailer of your future self,
Yeah,
rocking those English skills.
I love that.
And don't forget to reward yourself along the way.
Yes.
Did you reach a milestone?
Yay.
Celebrate.
Absolutely.
Did you finally master a tricky grammar concept?
Yeah.
Treat yourself to something you enjoy.
Right. Those positive reinforcements can go a long way.
Yeah, they really can. Okay, so I think we've covered just about everything.
We have.
But before we sign off,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay.
What's one small, actionable step they can take today
That's a great question.
to level up their English game?
How about this? Commit to watching one short English language video on YouTube today.
Okay.
Something related to your interests.
All right.
Maybe it's a cooking tutorial, a travel vlog, a music video, just 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And here's the key while you're watching. Pay attention to the words and phrases that stand out to you.
Yeah.
Write them down, look them up, try to use them in a sentence.
Yeah.
It's a small step,
It is.
but it's a step in the right direction.
I love that challenge. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's doable. And it gets you engaging with the language in a fun and meaningful way.
Right.
So to all of our amazing listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked some inspiration and given you some practical tools to take your English to the next level. Remember, it's a journey, not a race.
It is.
Enjoy the process, celebrate those small victories, and never stop exploring the amazing world of language.
And don't forget to share your experiences with us.
Yes.
Connect with us on social media. Let us know what's working for you, what challenges you're facing, and what you're excited to learn next.
We love hearing from you guys.
We do.
We're all in this together.
We are.
That's a wrap for this deep dive.
Yes.
We'll catch you next time with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those English muscles flexing.
Keep flexing.